Crito is a short dialogue that takes place after Socrates' trial, while he's in jail just a few days before his execution. Crito is one of Socrates' wealthier friends, and he comes to him after he's bribed the guards and prepared a way for Socrates to escape Athens. He's come to Socrates on this day to try and convince him to escape and go into exile. Crito says that it would be easy for Socrates to escape, that the guards and the people who would sneak him out of the city aren't even asking for very much money to do the job, and that not just Crito, but several of Socrates' friends have actually come to Athens specifically to help Socrates escape. They've brought money and they're prepared to spend it. He says that Socrates has no need to worry about what he'll do if he goes into exile, that there are many who would be happy to take him in, and that he could even live in comfort until his natural death. He further bids Socrates to think about what people will think of Crito and Socrates' other friends. After all, they know that Crito is wealthy. They know that he could easily afford to manage Socrates' escape. So if Socrates refuses his help here, people are going to think that Crito didn't care enough about Socrates to offer to help. He also bids Socrates to think about his children. He argues that Socrates ought to raise them and teach them himself, if at all possible, and that to let himself die here would be akin to abandoning them. Socrates responds by saying that Crito need not care what people say about him. After all, the opinion of the multitude is almost always useless, and that the only opinions one need consider when selecting a course of action are those of experts in whatever action they're undertaking. After all, no athlete listens to sports fans on how to train, but only to physicians and coaches. This is especially so in matters regarding virtue, justice, good, and evil. He also says that whether he lives or dies is of little consequence in this case. All that matters is whether or not it would be right for Socrates to escape. This is an important ethical concept because what Socrates is saying is that the ends do not justify the means. What he's saying is that if something is wrong, it's wrong no matter what. Circumstances and consequences don't change that. Now Socrates starts to formulate an argument as to why he should not escape, and the first thing he does is set down two premises, which Crito immediately agrees to. The first is that one must never commit an injustice, no matter what. A wrong is a wrong even if it's committed in return for another wrong, like I said before. To Socrates, the ends do not justify the means. The second premise is that one should abide by one's agreements, given that the agreement was just to begin with. At this point, Socrates steps into a character role. He speaks as the laws of Athens, and proposes an argument that they might give should they notice Socrates escaping the city. The laws say that Socrates, having lived in Athens for some 70-odd years, having multiple opportunities to leave the city or travel, or even move permanently somewhere else, has entered into an agreement with the city that he must follow the laws and the judgments rendered by the state. He chose to live in Athens, and he chose to live under Athenian law, and to now break that agreement is to become exactly what he was accused of in court. For by escaping, he would undertake to corrupt and destroy the very foundation of Athenian society, in principle at least. And if Socrates does escape in this way, could he even go to another city? I mean, what place could legitimately accept him, knowing that he's someone who would break the law to save his own skin? On the contrary, the laws say that Socrates must do what is just, and abide by the decision of the state, so that no one can say that Socrates compromised his ethics, but that he held true throughout his life. This makes all the more sense considering what Socrates believed was waiting for him in the afterlife. It just doesn't make any sense for him to break his ethics for something so transient as life, and likely only a few years at that. The argument presented in Crito is ultimately a form of social contract. Now, there are some who believe that this presents a contradiction in Plato's works, because here in Crito, Plato, through Socrates, appears to be arguing for social contract, while one of his later works, The Republic, also concerns social contract, although in this case, Plato, through Socrates, argues against it. Now, we aren't going over the Republic in detail here, but the argument that Plato and Socrates are rejecting in the Republic is that of the social contract as the origin of justice. In Crito, however, the social contract isn't presented as the origin of justice, but rather what Socrates is saying in Crito is that a just man will recognize the authority of the state and the obligation that he has to abide by its laws. The state is tasked with safeguarding the well-being of hundreds or thousands or even more people, which means it's far more important than just one man. And furthermore, because Socrates has enjoyed the protection of the state, he's become a part of that system, and he needs to go along with it, whether or not he likes the consequences.